You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is December 23rd, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region, and trying to bring you the news from a liberty perspective. Today, in our panel, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California, and my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So today's show, these will be slightly abbreviated shows, just because we're running up on the end of the year. But on today's show, we thought it was kind of interesting news recently that in politics, it's kind of come full circle for the GOP. They sort of rode into office in one big issue was the trans issue, and now they're making a lot of moves on that come to the end of the year as well. So we're going to talk about some of the cuts that they're proposing to trans healthcare, and then we are going to talk in our Knucklehead Noise Patrol a little bit about the way Tim Waltz hears things differently than the rest of us when he hears somebody like J.D. Vance speak. We'll wait till we get to the show to explain that further. But before we get into any of those stories, let's talk about our quote of the day. And since it's sort of a healthcare related show, I thought this would be a good quote to use. This is a quote from Steve Forbes. And of course, many in the Liberty movement know who he is. In fact, if you go to Freedom Fest, he seems like he's there every single time because you can see him walking down the halls there. But anyways, he is definitely somebody who is about sound money and a lot of other good sort of liberty-oriented economics, I guess you'd call it. And he said this related to healthcare. He said the real cure for what ails our healthcare system today is less government and more freedom. And I don't think you could make a simpler prescription to fix our healthcare system. I mean, the more government we get into healthcare, the worse it gets, and the more it costs. Just like everywhere, right? I mean, the lines get longer, or the prices never see. I mean, Obama. Yeah, I mean, we talked about that before, and I mean, they passed Obamacare, and what Americans are spending on healthcare doesn't change. It's just simply the amount of money that government subsidizes it. The trend just keeps going upward. It's just absolutely nuts. So, anyways, you go ahead, Leon. What do you think about this quote?
Well, I think this quote is a very good one, but I think it could be applied to almost anything, any phenomenon, any industry that we are dealing with. Whenever the government gets into it, they always mess it up. The government is very good at bringing misery. We know that. It seems like that's their purpose in life, to bring misery to its citizens. And it's a very germane thing to be talking about this right now, because we're dealing with they're dealing with this Obamacare subsidies in the Congress right now. And you remember, I don't know if you remember, Jason, maybe you were too young. You were still a young pup maybe that time. No, I'm joking. But but you remember all the promises from the Obamacare. Oh, we're gonna lower prices. Every American is going to saving, or every American family going to be saving $2,500. If you like your doctor, you could keep your doctor. If you like your plan, you could keep your plan, or whatever all the crap was. But all these promises were made by the government, well, represented by Obama at the time, and they all turned out to be a pack of lies. We know that now for sure, because not that we are saving any money, but we are taking money from one group of people and giving it to people who need health care. Because right now, the subsidies that they want to give the insurance companies are getting astronomical, and Chuck Schumer and others are trying to save healthcare for Americans, and all they're talking about really and truly is how to take money from one group of people and give to the other. So Steve Forbes is absolutely correct. Okay, get the government out of healthcare, and all of us can be more free, and all of us can be a lot better off.
Yeah, and here's the quote or rather the graph we show. This is from the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and this is essentially healthcare expenditures per capita in the United States. And if you look at this period of time that they give you this graph, it goes from the year 2000 to 2021. And if you can see, Obamacare comes in obviously sometime while Obama was president. I can't remember. Was that in what, 2010 or something? I can't remember.
Obamacare came in 2010. Yes, Obama came in the beginning of 2009. He won in 2008. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, and so if you look at Obamacare, you see this trend, and the government the government roadblock to stop this progressive prices doesn't change at all. Doesn't change anything. It just is right along the same trajectory. We just keep spending more and more and more. And of course, a lot of this is driven by the government, spending so much money through Medicare and Medicaid. All that money that's coming from the government distorts the system, and it's just gonna. It's the same thing with college funding too. If you wondered why your kid's college tuition just never stops going up, yet the government is in there fighting the fight to make sure all kids have an education, and they're making it so unaffordable that eventually kids are going to just be crippled to have that education that the government is fighting for. So and it's kind of a similar thing with healthcare too. If we want to cure these things, we have to kill the cancer, which is government.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Because this cancer always metastasize, no matter what we do, they always metastasize. So you gotta kill the cancer at its root. That's what we gotta do.
So that's the prescription from Dr. Forbes. We probably could have found a similar quote from Rand Paul, another actual doctor who actually gets this economic stuff too.
Yes, exactly. Good point.
Yeah. But anyways, that's a great quote from Steve Forbes. So it's good to finally have a quote from him on the show. But anyways, we use this particular quote because we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare and the government, coming out recently full bore against a lot of these trans operations and other things like that the government is also spending money on. And we've had a little bit of debate on the show, not so much about whether or not we think it's effective or not, these surgeries, but more on principles of parental choice, which I'm sure we'll get back into on this. But let's watch a video real quick to see that the Trump administration is really pushing hard on this issue to cut government spending in this area. So let's take a little video snippet here of what's going on.
In Washington, the Department of Health and Human Services is taking action to restrict gender transition medical procedures on minors. The proposals include ending Medicaid and Medicare funding to hospitals that perform such procedures.
To reinforce the need to protect our children, we are announcing that certified Medicare and Medicaid hospitals, pretty much everyone in the hospital in the country, will no longer be permitted to perform certain sex-rejecting procedures on children. Any hospital that does offer sex-rejecting procedures to vulnerable populations of pediatric-age kids will no longer be able to participate in the Medicare and Medicaid program.
So I think, Leon, on this one, we're going to be mostly in agreement, at least on this part of the story, which is the the Trump administration cutting off the funds for care in this area. But I don't think the left will agree with us on this. Let's hear their thoughts on it too before we get much farther into our discussion. So this is from one of the local Los Angeles news channels, and kind of gives their impressions of what this is going to do.
A new proposal would strip federal funds to hospitals that provide gender-affirming care and punish doctors and parents who contribute to it. LGBTQ+ advocates and families of transgender kids are denouncing the move, calling it cruel and dangerous. Constitutional law expert Robert McWhirter joins us live this morning to talk more on the proposal's path forward.
Awesome. They found a constitutional expert in California. Let's hear what he has to say.
Good morning.
We would like to start off by asking, the administration is hitting hospitals where it hurts to get this done. Of course, we are talking about hitting the wallet. Is this within the bounds of the government, and what kind of legal challenges can we expect?
Well, I don't really think it is. And again, as you know me, I always begin with the owner's manual, which is the Constitution of the United States. And the 14th Amendment says that you don't deny people equal protection of the laws, which means transgender people have the same rights as everybody else to health care.
Well, as you can see, the view from California is much different than from a lot of other places in the country. But what I really liked about that clip is that it shows the way they see the world, and maybe the difference between the way Steve Forbes sees it and this constitutional expert. He holds up the Constitution as the instruction manual for the country, and his idea is that there's nothing in here that says that there should be that the government should be discriminating on the healthcare between trans people and non-trans people. And yes, that's true. But the bigger point is there's nothing in there that says the government is supposed to have anything to do with healthcare. Right?
Yes.
You get the government out of healthcare, because fundamentally, this is what I think we're going to agree on, Leon, on this particular issue, is that I think both of us don't want the government to be spending anything on this.
Right. True. Very true. we may have slightly different reasoning in this particular case, but for sure, we don't want the government doing this sort of thing. But did you finish with your statements? Are you done with that?
Well, there is a second part to this whole thing, and that's one prong that recently happened, where the Trump administration, through its executive authority, is trying to cut how they spend money in government on these things. And they're trying to say, look, this stuff is voodoo science. We're not going to spend any more money on it. But that said, the House recently, under the GOP, leadership, decided to pass a bill to criminalize gender reaffirming care for minors. And I think this is where, I think even though we both agree probably that this is, something that doesn't have much efficacy for kids probably, but to me, there's a parental rights issue going on here as well. And the idea that there's a criminalization going on. I certainly don't think the government should be spending any money on this nonsense, but I get worried on some of this. But let me throw this to you first, and then I can, jump back in. This in a nutshell is there's both a criminalization thing that's starting to happen, and there's a cutting of funds, which I think we're both on the same page, at least on the cutting of funds. So.
Yes, I think this on this particular issue, this is where we're going to part ways, okay? Because this so-called agenda affirming care, when performed in relation to minors, okay? I'm not talking about adults who are free to make their own choices. I'm talking about minors, people under the age of 18. This is nothing but child abuse, period. So I think this is a case where the government has a compelling interest to intervene to protect our children from these doctors. And one of the big scandals that we never talk about that is ongoing right now is the American Medical Association, who's taking part in this damn nonsense about gender affirming care. This is child abuse, plain and simple. And in this case, I totally agree with the government getting involved, because there's a compelling interest to protect children from the brutality of this so-called care. The very big problem is, it is true that there are children who suffer with gender dysphoria, and I'm very compassionate about their struggles. It is a serious, serious struggle. But the solution is not to be cutting off healthy body parts or giving them hormone therapy and then cutting off healthy body parts and then telling them they are now transitioned, that a boy can now become a girl and a girl can become a boy. There's no science to support this. None. Zero. No science to support this. These people need serious psychological help, and I'm all in on trying to help them get that help. But we cannot continue with this nonsense about gender affirming care, which are doing nothing, absolutely nothing, but destroying the lives of our young children.
Well, yeah, Leon, and I think both of us probably would agree that we both probably think that there's no efficacy in this stuff. The problem is, though, that this is where I come down on the parental rights issue, though, is that there's a lot of bad, I guess bad science is the best way to put it, that has been put in these journals and other things that it's almost by an advocacy group, it feels like, in a lot of cases. I mean, I think a good person to follow and some of this is Billboard Chris. He's been going around and really making a splash around the world, carrying his signs that no boy or girl is born in the wrong body. They're fine just the way they are, is his message. But the issue is that how do we know what we know in terms of science, right? Like, if we think that we can empower the government to tell people, especially when there is all this junk science around this, where people think they're really getting good science on this stuff, and both the parent and the child think that that's what they want, and then the government comes in, and if the government says no, well, what about when the government comes in and they think they know what's best? It's like, say for instance, the vaccines during COVID, right? I mean, forcing all this experimental stuff on kids, or maybe you've got a religious family and they believe in, say, Christian Science, and they don't believe that medicine is the best thing for their kid and they want to pray. Do we really want the government to be coming in all these situations and pushing the parent out of the way and saying they know what's best for the kid? And I certainly think, Leon, that most of these parents are probably wrong, that want to do this with their kids. But I think there'd be a lot less mistakes if people were responsible for themselves and government stayed out of all this stuff. And I think those parents who failed would be lessons for everybody else, and we'd have less people impacted overall than trying to empower government is the way I kind of see it. But I certainly see your point. I mean, if we are going to have child abuse, this, cutting off body parts certainly sounds like it.
No, not just cutting off body parts. You're talking about healthy body parts.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's what this so-called gender affirming care is doing. It is cutting off healthy body parts. What could be the basis of that? There's no science to back this up. So I understand your point about the government involvement. Well, we know I just spoke a little while ago, and you totally agreed that whenever the government gets into almost anything, they bring misery to the situation. They always do. But I don't believe in no government. I believe in limited government. And I believe the government can intervene into certain situations when there's a compelling interest. And the Supreme Court has defined what exactly is meant by a compelling interest. In this particular case, the compelling interest is the life of the child. Okay? It is true that you would prefer, in nearly all cases, maybe in 99% of the cases, I would prefer that the parents are making choices in some of these cases. But the parents of transgender, quote unquote, transgender children, I don't believe there's any such thing as a transgender child. I don't believe in that. But for the purposes of this show, let's use that term. But the parents of these children are relying on these so-called experts. And these experts have nothing in terms of science to back up what they are proposing for the child. Nothing. So we have had so many examples so far of these so-called detransitioners, people who try to change their gender, realize it was a mistake, and then they have irreparable damage done to their body, their spirits, and their souls. Okay? Yeah. There's a famous one, a girl by the name of Chloe Cole or something like that. I saw on TV some time ago, who went through this. She thought she was a boy. She went to transition, quote unquote transition, and then she came back, and then she realized what a mistake, all the horrors she was going through, and she tried to repair the damage, but it was too late. and she is now suffering with also the long-term problems. There's a recent article, I believe I saw it on foxnews.com, about the same thing, about a woman who tried to become a boy and then had to come back, and now she's having all kind of long-term problems. But the point is, though, it's not that I want the government intervening everywhere and anywhere they can. No, I don't want that. But I think there are cases compelling where there's a compelling interest, and the compelling interest is the life of the child, where we are doing things that are irreversible to that child, like cutting off breasts or cutting off a penis or cutting off or giving them hormone therapies and all that kind of stuff, giving girls testosterone and all these other things. You cannot change your chromosomes. It's either it's XX or it's XY. That is it for your life. You cannot change that. And as long as you cannot change it, there's no amount of drugs and no amount of surgery that can change your chromosomal structure. It cannot be done. So given those facts that are irrefutable, the government has a compelling interest to protect the lives of children. Now, if somebody turns 18, where they're allowed to vote, where they could take up a gun and go in a foreign country and kill somebody in our names, fine. I don't agree with you, but you're free to do this. But if you're under 18, I think this is a compelling interest of the government where we should stop this practice and get the people the help that they need, which is psychological help to try to fix their dysphoria.
The only problem we had is I feel like we've gotten the government involved already, and I think the government's causing a lot of the psychological harm that's leading these kids to think they're this way, right? I mean, I don't think it's any accident that it's in these blue states where everybody loves the government involvement in these areas, that kids are growing up with all this confusion, right? And I mean, I was shocked. I mean, there was nothing like this when I was a kid. There was a few kids that expressed as gay, right? And like in my high school, and and they were kind of different, I mean, there was just a handful of kids. Now today, it not only does it seem like there's a lot more than a handful of kids who are gay, but they're like everything, right? They think there's genders that haven't been documented yet.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And this is the issue, right? I mean, like, I remember seeing my daughter brought home a thing from Planned Parenthood where it was during a sex ed type of thing that they were teaching them several years ago. This is about 5-6 years ago or something. And I was shocked because this whole thing was not really about like, okay, this is a penis, this is a vagina, and here's how babies are made, right? That's not what it was about. It was literally about all these different kids who were on the different spectrum of gender, and they were done with cartoon characters. Okay. So, and it was about how there was, it was almost like to be, what we would have considered the norm when we were growing up was the abnorm, right? I mean, it was just like one of a spectrum, and just the normal man or woman who might get married and have kids to somebody with the opposite sex. That was like equal weight to about 9 or 10 other things on the spectrum, right? Which is nuts, because you don't teach to the extreme, you teach to the norm, right? And this is, and yet this is government, right? And they're smuggling this stuff into the schools under all kinds of hats, and they're making kids think that that's normal, right? I mean, you can see it as propaganda when they're teaching something that just is not part of the normal experience for people, and now suddenly you're getting all these kids in these blue areas that are just propagandized to thinking that they're, completely confused, I guess, about their sexuality.
It's a valid point, Jason. It's a valid point you're raising here, because at the beginning of the show, we started off the show by talking about getting the government out of healthcare, and here I am later on in the same show talking about this is probably one of the few places I would like to see the government intervene, since I'm a proponent of limited government, not no government. So it does raise a little bit of a few contradictory issues in my position on this, because I still stand by everything that I've said at the beginning and now, even though it appears contradictory. But and to bolster your point a little bit, in California, where we are, and we have some crazy leftists running our government, our state government here. They passed a law that a child, that is someone under the age of 18, can start the transition in school, and the teacher or the counselor can lie either by omission or commission, can lie to the parents.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like the law's passed, signed into law by Governor Newsom.
Well, that was at the beginning of the year, I think. So we've had that's been in effect now here in California a bit. So
right. Well, it was challenged, and a federal judge said it was unconstitutional. It's probably going to be appealed. I don't know, but it probably will be appealed. But the point is, though, here is the government, and here get back to my contradictory positions here. Here is the government telling its agents, its representatives, well, in this case, telling teachers, it is okay to lie to parents. Imagine that. To the parents of children, it's okay to lie to them, either through omission or actual commission. And this is really unbelievable to think about it. So you still, even though we have that risk with us when you have the government involved in matters such as these, where parental rights are certainly at issue. I do not disagree with you in that there's an issue of parental rights. But when there's a compelling interest, and I think there's a compelling interest here, okay, I really believe the government can intervene. And I think this is absolutely necessary for intervention, because the American Medical Association is doing such a disservice to the citizens of this land. It is unbelievable that they should ever be a prestigious organization in this country. They should never be ever again.
And by the way, too, I believe, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that the UK has already said that they're not going to allow this anymore on their kids. I'm pretty sure that's one of the rare areas where they seem to be going in the right direction.
Yeah, in the right direction.
I guess. Yeah, at least on the science. I mean, we may, debate a little bit on the parental rights thing, but anyways, if you're watching us on public access, that's all the time we have for you here, but we're going to continue the discussion for a little bit longer online, so you can catch the rest of this discussion at knuckleheadsofliberty.com, and you can check out our other shows that we've done then. But until next time, for you guys, Merry Christmas, and let's get back to the show, Leon.
Merry Christmas also. Yes, indeed. Merry Christmas. Yes.
Yeah, but there is I did too a bit that you undersold as well on your point, is that this isn't just damage that's being done to these kids over a lifetime when they have these things done to them. They are becoming permanent patients for a lifetime.
Yes.
So you're taking a healthy person and turning them into a lifelong medical patient when they have to get these hormones, and they have to, I mean, some of the stuff would sound pretty disturbing, but I mean, these people can have urinating problems for the rest of their lives, after they have these surgeries, incontinence, and and to top it off, they have zero sexual function. So they give all this up for, maybe a fantasy that they're not going to live out. Yes, it's or at least live out in kind of a very, because for almost all these people, they lose their sexual sensation. Most of them do, I mean,
they do.
Real horror show of things that are being done to them. So, I mean, that's why I come back to, I think me and Leon would completely agree probably on our view of the efficacy of this. But I just think it's really dangerous when you start putting the government in place of the parent. Certainly we can find some places where, if there's some parent chaining their kid under a sink, I don't think we're going to find any medical journal anywhere that says that's okay. even in leftist journals.
Well, I mean, yeah. right. I mean, the point is that I am trying to make out of this, Jason. I think this is we part in company a little bit on this issue, but I am starting from the point that I see this thing that they call gender affirming care. I see that as child abuse, and I think in no other area of child abuse do we permit these parental rights override whatever is being done. So like the parental rights, if you have a child abuse case that is not related to the so-called gender affirming care, we will never think about parental rights under those cases. We will never think, well, the parents have a right to beat the child until there are marks all over the child's skin, and that should be that should override the enforcement of the law against child abuse. Because if you really think about it,
well, we do have the situation where maybe a parent wants to pray for a child instead of taking him to the hospital. And in that case, that's also a parental rights issue, right? I mean, in terms of like Christian Science and some of these other issues.
Yes.
And, a lot of people would say that's child abuse if you don't take that child to the hospital. But I'm sure the parent in that case doesn't see it that way. The parent probably thinks they're doing exactly what God wants them to do, which is to pray for the child.
Well, Jason, if a child is dying and the parents is only thinking, well, we should pray for this child and don't take that child to get the medical treatment that the child should be having, that definitely is child abuse. Well, I can't see, however, how else you could characterize that.
I guess then the question starts to become,
and I believe, and let's be clear, I believe in the power of prayer. Okay, I do believe in it, but I don't believe in the power of prayer to the extent that a child is laying there dying from some whatever disease or whatever it is, or some infection or something, and the parents say, well, the only thing we need to do is pray to God and everything, and it's going to be. It's going to be okay. It might be, but the foolishness of those parents who choose to pray, and I don't want to go off topic here, but the foolishness of these people who think we could pray and the child will be okay, right? They pray to God, the same God who they're praying to wants us to test all things. It says so right there in the Bible: test all things, hold fast to what is good. So if the God tell you to test all things, if you're looking at your child, you should be able to sit down and say, well, this, maybe the prayer is not God, what God wants. God will want us to do something else, which is to take the child to the hospital. So this is the foolishness of these things. They're not even reading what's in their Bible. So if this situation arises, that as you are describing, where they're going to use prayer to heal a child, I think is in violation of their own faith to start with. But I think that is child abuse, which I would call for government intervention in such a case. Is a compelling interest there.
Well, except that even in the case of that, if you go back to the Bible, then you would also have situations where God is giving illustrations of healing prayer within the Bible. Right. And so, I mean, this is part of the confusion. Right. And if somebody literally thinks that that's the message they're getting from the Bible, and then we put the government in the situation of being the arbiter, because I mean, think about this too. I mean, what if then that same parent who would rely on prayer is also probably going to be very skeptical of a vaccine from the government. And if the government then says, hey, we've got this new vaccine, and guess what? If you don't take it, you're abusing your child. That's child. I mean, this is the issue, right? We can't expect the government to be the arbiter of being on the side of right, and all these things. I mean, we can set laws, but we can't necessarily be. There's no guarantee that a law that the government makes is actually going to be moral. Right?
Well, you're absolutely right, Jason. You're absolutely right. The government are never good at picking winners and losers. Never. Okay. The marketplace does a far better job of picking winners and losers. Far better. than the government ever could. But we get back to this one thing that I'm going to stick to, which is what is the compelling interest of the child in these particular cases? That's it.
Yeah. Well, and I
What
would
is
say
the compelling interest?
But you talk about child abuse as well, and up until about 10 minutes ago, when the Trump administration started to make moves against this stuff, the government, you could say, was actually the abuser.
Yeah, that's true.
This is my point, right? Is that to give the government the power to say, I mean, we really hopes that we get the right government in there, and I guess that's where I like to side with parents, because in the end, yeah, there will be some parents who make bad decisions with their kids, and that's going to happen in everything. But if it happens with just a few parents, it's going to be a lot less than if the government gets it systemically wrong, and suddenly there could just be a whole bunch of people, like a whole bunch of kids who were forced to wear masks when they were 2 years old, running around and getting these injections. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, the government can get it wrong. And when the government gets it wrong, it's millions of kids that get it wrong.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, true. True.
So.
I cannot deny what you're saying. I mean, intellectually it makes quite a lot of sense, and from the standpoint of liberty, I can see it. But I just think there are a few cases where the government should, even though they mess up too often, but
well, we're definitely cool with no chaining the kid under the we'll be on the same.
Cool with that.
No chaining the kid under the sink. There's no journal. I don't care what it is. Even if you prayed, you're probably not going to get the answer that was okay. Chain your child under the sink, and okay. There's a little gray area here, I guess.
Yeah, there is because I even have to concede I am taking a contradictory positions right here, within 30 minutes of each other. I'm taking some contradictory positions here, so it's and I can't resolve that contradiction in my head. So,
well, one thing I do want to point out though to the audience is that one thing we're not, the reason the disagreement is coming up is because we're talking about minors. And
yes,
if we're talking about adults, me and Leon are on exactly the same page, I think.
Absolutely. That's a clear as day. Yes.
Stupid, that's part of freedom. The freedom to be stupid is part of your freedom.
Exactly.
So it's when minors, it's that, who speaks for the minor is the problem. Yeah. we're not going to bind our minors to contracts for life. And that's part of the problem, right? I mean, here this kid is going in and they're getting surgery. It's going to impact them the rest of their life for something that they were not mature enough to make the decision on.
Enough to make a decision about. Old. Exactly.
Yeah. So anyways.
And if this thing is so compelling that, this child is gender dysphoria and a boy is really a girl or a girl is really a boy, if it's so compelling, they could wait until they're 18 years old and make the decisions themselves. Okay, that's what I think.
Yeah, and in the end, if I wind up losing this argument, I got to say, the outcome probably won't be that terrible, at least in this particular case of transing the kids. But I do worry about it for a lot of other things, right? I mean, because on principle, the government can come in and be on the wrong side of a lot of other things.
Well, yeah, man. They're always on the wrong side of the amount of taxes they charge me every year. So.
Well,
sometimes I feel like they're trying to make me poor.
I gotta say that this whole trans thing is definitely, especially with kids, is definitely one of the insanities of the left that helped the right win in the last election.
Yes.
Speaking of insanities of the left, this brings us to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol for this episode. And here we have an instance where J.D. Vance was at a conference. He was at something called AmFest, which is a conference put on by TPUSA to essentially rally the young people in the conservative movement to the cause. And J.D. Vance was there giving a speech, saying what he thought of DEI, and Tim Walz kind of heard something much different than what everybody else heard in that audience. So let me play you the video so you can kind of appreciate. And again, here's our former VP candidate Tim Walz against the guy who thankfully is in there at VP, JD Vance, compared to Tim Walz. But here's the video from that.
Unlike the left, we stand against treating anybody, and I love what Nikki said about this. We don't treat anybody different because of their race or their sex. So we have relegated DEI to the dustbin of history, which is exactly where it belongs. In the United States of America, you don't have to apologize for being white anymore. And if you're an Asian, you don't have to talk around your skin color when you're applying for college, because we judge people based on who they are, not on ethnicity and things they can't control.
So what I heard from JD Vance sounded pretty good. Treat everybody equally. That, get rid of programs that don't. So it sounded good to me. But I wonder how it sounded to Democrats. Let's check out Tim Walz.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy, when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white.
These people are just unhinged. I don't know how else to describe it. You say, let's get rid of DEI because it treats people different. Now white people won't have to apologize for being white, and that's white supremacy.
These sick people, and Tim Walz I'm talking about, obviously. These sick people will be the first to tell you about Martin Luther King's dream. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day grow up in a nation where they are judged not by the color of the skin, but by the content of their character. These are the people who are going to tell you that they believe in Martin Luther King's dream more than anybody else. They live and breathe his dream. And then when JD Vance stands up there and says something which anybody with half a brain, well, then maybe I'm expecting too much of Tim Walz, I guess. Anybody with half a brain can see the logic of it. You don't treat people differently because of their skin color, because of their ethnicity, because of their sex. We do not do that. We are not supposed to be doing that in America. But recently now, we come about this whole thing. Well, not recently, we started a long time now. We have this DEI nonsense where it's only if you have the right skin color, the right ethnicity, or the right gender, I guess, that is how you make your way in society. And anybody else should be excluded. In particular, white males. Oh my goodness gracious. Our mutual friend was talking about that. Well, he's a little bit wacky on the issue, but he had a legitimate point, right? That
wacky on a lot of issues. I mean, this is the guy who wants to put tampons in boys' bathrooms.
Yes. So it is just unbelievable that this buffoon, Tim Walz, almost became Vice President of the United States. I don't know if it's almost. Kamala was beaten very badly, but but this buffoon, who was governor in a state where he had immigrants, I guess he didn't see the skin color at that time. Immigrants, apparently Somali in ethnicity, apparently stole. Some say on the bottom it's $1 million. Some say at the top is $1 billion. I'm sorry. Some saying on the top it's 9 billion. Right under his nose, his buffoonic nose, and he couldn't see it. He couldn't see it. Or he allowed it to happen. Whichever one. Either incompetence or ignorance. Whichever one. It's bad. It's really bad. And thank God this buffoon didn't become president of the vice president of the United States. We could only thank the good Lord for that one.
Well, and this kind of in almost like brings it back full circle to me. It feels like to that whole quote that we had from Steve Forbes, and it's not just like you said, Leon, it's not just our healthcare system, it's get government out of everything to help cure the system. And I mean, here we had a system, of racial problems in the country, from its founding. You had issues where people of one skin color were treated differently than another, but that was cemented in government, in law. And then when we get rid of it, or supposedly end it with the Civil War, then you get Jim Crow laws, which is, again, in a part of the country, the government gets in and puts its thumb on the scale based on race. Then we get rid of those, and then government to the rescue again, and it then puts its thumb on the scale of race, but then it does it in the other direction, right? And it's just like, instead of ever just getting it right, and we talked about this before, we should do I think February is when Jackie Robinson's birthday is. We'll have a show that really digs into that again, but that's a really good example of, without government, with just baseball teams competing against one another's, there was some hostility against Black people in baseball initially, but you didn't have government in all areas telling people that you couldn't have Black people on teams. And eventually the market just sort of took over and got rid of the problem by itself, because it was the Brooklyn Dodgers wound up taking Jackie Robinson. And guess what? They started beating other teams, and they showed Jackie Robinson's great player and better than a lot of the other players. And he's helping our team to win. And you guys want to just have this irrational bias and not have them? Okay, great. We'll take all these guys who are Jackie Robinson buddies on our team, and we'll beat the crap out of you. And they did. And then all the other teams, just because of competition, they integrated themselves before the civil rights laws of the Voting Rights Act and everything of 1964, 65. It happened before, not after. It was the marketplace fixing it. And quite frankly, those laws probably wouldn't have passed if Jackie Robinson hadn't been giving an example to everybody about how goofy it was to make laws forbidding Black people to play in these games. So it just,
but Jackie Robinson, Jackie Robinson, did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm just pointing back to Steve Forbes. Get government out of it. That's the cure. Get government out and it'll fix itself. Instead of Dr. Government coming in with his fumble fingers and scalpels and cutting off the wrong things.
Cutting off the quote-unquote healthy body parts, shall we say. Yes, but I was going to say that Jackie Robinson signified the power of merit over government quotas, government forcing people to do things that the marketplace would not allow. This was almost 20 years before, in 1947, almost 20 years before the whole civil rights movement and this signing of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. 20 years prior, competition made it impossible to keep Blacks out of baseball, and eventually some of the other sports started to follow, the professional sports. Eventually, basketball started to go that way also. But the point is though, it was merit over quotas that brought this about. And you know who support quotas? The government. Who support merit? The marketplace. And this is what we have to reintroduce some Americans too. That merit always pays off. This DEI nonsense that say, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is nothing. It's a debt of progress if we keep this thing within our body politics. DEI, if you turn the letters correct, it comes out die. Okay, that's what it turns into. And it's very important that we destroy this DEI nonsense. Believe me.
Well, the sad thing is too that most of kids today would never know that Jackie Robinson's story preceded the government coming in to fix things, right? And to fix things, right? Yes. And that's the sad thing, right? I mean, the government schools, I mean, the government everywhere is just messes everything up. You know, that's how we fix society, folks, is to get to minimize government as much as possible. But anyways, you got any last words, Leon, before we wrap up the show?
Well, I will go back to Steve Forbes' quote. And I think it applies not only in healthcare. I think there almost every area that the government is involved. If we can just remove them from there, we'll have less government and we'll have more freedom. And having more freedom should always be our goal.
Yep. Well, if you've been watching, think of what you can do before our next show in your community to advance liberty. And you know, if you haven't been particularly liberty oriented in the past, maybe that's what you can do for Christmas, is to, you know, think about maybe you can give the liberty to other people that you would expect for yourself, you know, because ultimately this is the thing, right? I mean, we all have to believe in liberty for each other, not just, it's not a one-way street. So, you know, maybe that's a Christmas message for everybody. Give somebody else you don't know a little bit of liberty. Well, anyways, until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.